The chamber of the Galactic Council was unusually still. Conversations that normally hummed in 17 distinct languages had fallen silent. Every eye, whether 2, 4, or 8, was locked on the lone human seated at the polished obsidian table. Ambassador Vex Tora of the Syrinx Confederacy shifted uneasily in his exosuit. His three throats felt dry as he observed Earth's representative, Ambassador Helena Harper, smiling in a way that did not quite reach her eyes. "So let me understand this correctly," Harper began, her tone even, almost pleasant. "After 8 months of negotiation, after we gave your council unrestricted access to our quantum communication system, after we helped defend your Proxima colonies from the Void Swarm, you've decided that humanity isn't mature enough for full membership?" Tora's scales prickled. The temperature regulators in his suit whirred, struggling to keep pace. Something in Harper's voice was triggering instincts older than his species' recorded history. "Ambassador Harper," he rasped carefully, "the Council appreciates Earth's contributions, truly, but certain behavioral patterns your people display have raised concerns." Council leader Zar Quinn, an imposing figure with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like liquid oil, leaned forward. "Perhaps you can explain," he said, "why your species shifts so easily between extreme courtesy and alarming aggression. Our observers have noted rapid transitions." Harper adjusted her diplomatic uniform and tilted her head. "And which observations led you to this conclusion?" A gelatinous delegate from Callisto Prime undulated forward. 3 cycles ago, one Marcus Weber was negotiating with Gorus merchants. When they attempted to alter the price mid-agreement, he excused himself, entered another room, and struck the wall so hard he broke bones in his hand. He then returned, still smiling, and continued the discussion as if nothing had happened. Harper gave a short laugh. "Marcus has anger management issues. We're rather embarrassed by him. But surely you aren't basing a planetary judgment on one man." Another delegate interjected, antenna twitching. "It is not just Weber. Our psychological profile of your species shows you all possess this capacity for contained rage. You bottle emotions until they rupture. It is disturbing." Harper's smile never wavered, but Vex Tora noticed her knuckles tighten ever so slightly around her datapad. His third heart accelerated. In 7 centuries of diplomacy, he had learned to recognize danger signs across dozens of species. Something was about to break. Zar Quinn pressed on, oblivious. "We have also reviewed your Earth entertainment archives. They glorify this. Transformation. You call it snapping, losing it, going off. It suggests even your diplomats may operate under restraint that could fail without warning." "So?" Harper asked smoothly. "You're denying our membership because humans get angry?" "Not anger alone," Zar Quinn corrected. "Because you conceal it. This council requires transparency of emotion from all member species. Yours hides." Harper inclined her head, voice calm. "And this decision is final?" "The council has voted," Zar Quinn declared. 37 in favor of delay, 5 against. Humanity may reapply after 50 years of demonstrated emotional stability. 50 years, Harper echoed, placing her datapad carefully on the table. "A mere blink in cosmic terms," Zar Quinn said magnanimously. "Your species is young. Use this time wisely," Vex Tora's instinct screamed. Harper's breathing had shifted, pupils dilating. They were microsignals, indicators of a predator preparing to strike. He tried to catch Zar Quinn's gaze to signal caution. But the council leader was already moving to the next item. "If we could now address the matter of Orion sector resource allocation, no." The single word was quiet, but it cleaved the chamber like a plasma blade. Zar Quinn froze. "I beg your pardon?" "I said no." Harper stood, smoothing her uniform with deliberate care. "We are not moving on. We are revisiting this decision, now." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Such defiance in council sessions was unthinkable. Zar Quinn frowned. "Ambassador, this outburst proves the very volatility we fear." Harper's smile returned, sharper this time. "Council leader, you misunderstand. What you are witnessing now is still very much humanity's polite face. Then we appreciate your restraint," Zar Quinn said dismissively. "But the matter is closed." Harper leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but cutting. Let me explain something your observers missed. Humans do not hide anger because we are deceitful. We hide it because we are trying to be kind. Our full emotional range overwhelms most species. So we created what we call polite mode. It exists for your comfort, not ours. The chamber seemed to exhale into silence. Even the environmental systems felt muted. Vextora gripped the edge of his console. Every instinct told him the mask is slipping. No recess, Harper said softly, with terrifying composure. I think it's time the Council saw what happens when humanity's polite mode is switched off, Harper said evenly, her voice carrying across the chamber. Especially since you've just made a decision that reshapes the future of 11 billion people without ever bothering to truly understand us. She tapped her datapad. The massive screen behind her flickered to life, filling the chamber with stark images, humanity's history of wars, roaring sports arenas, fiery political debates. This, she continued, gesturing toward the unfolding montage, is humanity when we stop being polite. We built civilizations, fought wars, split atoms, and reached the stars, while carrying emotions inside us strong enough to shatter the minds of most of your species. Ambassador Vextora's gaze flicked back to Harper. The faint tremor of restrained anger that had haunted her posture earlier was gone. What replaced it was far worse, steady, deliberate focus. This display is unnecessary, Council Leader Zarquin declared, raising his upper arms in a defensive gesture. Oh, I think it's very necessary, Harper replied coolly. Because in about 5 minutes, I'm going to stop being polite myself. And then, her voice dropped into a tone that prickled even Vextora's scales. We're going to have a very different conversation about humanity's place in this. Council! The chamber erupted in alarmed murmurs. Vextora scanned his fellow delegates. Didn't they see it? Didn't they recognize what was about to happen? They were on the brink of witnessing something unprecedented, a human diplomat deliberately lowering their emotional safeguards. And despite his rising fear, he couldn't help but wonder with grim fascination. What would it look like when Ambassador Harper's polite mode finally disengaged? Environmental systems strained to keep pace with the sudden spike of tension. Several delegates activated personal comfort fields, shimmering bubbles of tailored atmosphere to calm their nerves. Vextora longed to retreat into one himself, but as senior ambassador, appearances demanded composure. Ambassador Harper, Zarquin pressed, his voice straining to project calm authority. Your emotional display is being noted for the official record. This will not help your case. Harper laughed, not the rehearsed diplomatic chuckle she had wielded for months, but something raw and unrestrained. The sound made several delegates flinch. That's the problem with you, Zarquin, she said, pointing to her own face. You think this is an emotional outburst. It isn't, this is just me, without the filter. The real emotional display hasn't even started yet. Delegate Krill Vox's antenna flattened completely against her skull, a posture of extreme distress among her species. Ambassador Harper, please, consider the diplomatic repercussions. Oh, I am considering them, Harper said, leaning casually against the podium as though she owned the chamber. In fact, I've never been more clear-headed. That's the fascinating thing about humans. When we're polite, our thinking gets muddled. We hesitate. We hold back. We second-guess. But when polite mode switches off, she snapped her fingers. The sharp crack echoed like a gunshot. Everything becomes crystal clear. Fight or flight, evolved over millennia. Focus, distilled to its sharpest edge. Vextora felt his secondary heart pounding. Harper's entire presence had changed. The careful posture of a diplomat was gone. What stood before them now was something primal, commanding. Her gestures were larger, her tone sharper, her very presence demanding attention. Let's review what just happened, Harper said, beginning to pace. You've denied humanity membership on the basis of cultural observations so flimsy they'd be laughable if they weren't so dangerous. You've dismissed our scientific breakthroughs, our sacrifices during the Void Swarm crisis, and our good faith negotiations. Guards shifted at the chamber's edge, hands brushing their weapons. Harper noticed and smiled. Not the smooth, practiced smile of diplomacy, but something sharper, predatory. "Relax, gentlemen," she said lightly. "I'm not going to attack anyone." "That's not how this works," Zarquin bristled. What works exactly?" "The politeness switch," Harper explained, her tone suddenly that of a teacher lecturing a slow pupil. "When humans disengage polite mode, violence isn't our first response. It's far down the list. What comes first?" She stepped toward him, voice dropping. "Is brutal honesty." She stopped just short of his personal space, eyes locked on his. "So let me be brutally honest with you, Council Leader." Ambassador Harper stepped forward onto the elevated platform, ignoring the shrill warning tones that signaled she was breaching security boundaries. "Your decision is garbage," she declared, her voice cutting through the chamber. "It isn't about emotional transparency, it's about fear. You're terrified of humanity because we contain multitudes you can't even begin to comprehend." "That is quite enough," Zarquin's amplified voice thundered across the hall. "I'm just getting started," Harper shot back, eyes locked on him. "Let's discuss the real reason behind your decision, resources. Earth controls 70% of the galaxy's quantum communication network. Our terraforming technology is unmatched. And our military, though small, has proven devastatingly effective against threats your combined fleets struggled to contain." The chamber grew so silent that Vex Tora could hear the faint, involuntary buzzing of Delegate Krill Vox's wings, a stress reaction her species couldn't suppress. Harper was naming the unnameable. She was dragging political secrets into the light, unraveling years of careful diplomacy with brutal precision. "This isn't about our emotions," Harper continued. "It's about power. You hide behind claims of instability while stalling for time to replicate our technology." Zarquin's skin rippled in shifting colors, flashing from iridescent blue to a violent purple. "These accusations are outrageous." "Are they?" Harper lifted her datapad and sent a stream of figures to the central display. "Here's an amusing pattern. Every time humanity shares a breakthrough, the Council suddenly raises a new cultural concern about our readiness. 6 times in 3 years. What an extraordinary coincidence." Vex Tora felt his 3 hearts sink. She was dismantling decades of strategy in minutes, and she was doing it with evidence, undeniable and raw. "Ambassador Harper," Vex Tora ventured carefully, "perhaps these concerns could be discussed in a smaller committee." "No more committees, Vex Tora," Harper said, not unkindly. "No more closed-door meetings where nothing is resolved. This conversation happens here, in the open, for every delegate to hear." She turned to face the full chamber. "Here's the irony. Humans created polite mode to help us fit into your society. We studied your cultures, adapted to your communication styles, held ourselves back to put you at ease. And now, you're using that courtesy against us." Several delegates shifted uneasily, their discomfort plain. "Let me tell you what happens next," Harper said, her voice dropping into calm finality. "I will leave this chamber, and I will contact Earth. I will recommend we immediately suspend the sharing of all quantum communication technology. I will advise a review of our military support agreements, including Proxima. And then I will suggest humanity begin forging bilateral alliances directly with individual species, bypassing this council altogether." The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates leapt to their feet, shouting objections and questions. Zarquin slammed his arms on the console, shouting for order, but his 6 eyes betrayed raw panic. And Harper stood motionless in the storm she had unleashed, her expression composed, almost curious. Vex Tora realized, horrified, that she wasn't angry anymore. The fury had been deliberate, a controlled fire, not an uncontrolled blaze. She had wielded her emotions like a scalpel, not a weapon. When the uproar reached its peak, Harper raised one hand. Silence fell instantly. "That," she said quietly, "was just a preview of what happens when one human turns off polite mode. Now imagine what would happen if all of humanity stopped being polite at once." The words hung in the air like a blade. "Humanity doesn't need 50 years to learn emotional regulation, Council Leader. We mastered it millennia ago. What you've seen today is not a lack of control, it's me showing you just how controlled I can be." And with breathtaking ease, Harper shifted back into her diplomatic mask. Shoulders straightened, expression softened, tone smoothed. It was like watching a predator sheath its claws, leaving only the illusion of civility. "I will give this council one standard day to reconsider," she said pleasantly. "During that time, I suggest you review actual data on human diplomacy, rather than leaning on sensationalized cultural reports." She gathered her data pad and began walking toward the exit. Just before the doors sealed behind her, she glanced back. "Oh, and Council Leader?" All 6 of Zarquin's eyes fixed on her. "The next human you meet might not be as patient as I am. We're not all like me." Her smile returned, polite, diplomatic, and utterly predatory. "Some of us are much worse at staying polite." The doors slid shut behind her, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Vex Torah scanned the faces of his fellow delegates. The realization was dawning across every alien expression. They had gravely misjudged humanity, and now they had less than one day to undo their mistake. A complete violation of council decorum. Zarquin's 4 arms slashed the air in frantic gestures as he paced the sealed chamber. Only the highest-ranking delegates had been summoned to this crisis assembly, and the atmosphere was suffocating with tension, dense enough to be carved apart with a molecular blade. From his seat, Vextor drew a slow pull from his exosuit's nutrient port, the calming solution barely steadying his nerves. "With respect, Council Leader," he said carefully, "focusing solely on decorum misses the larger issue." "And what issue would that be?" Zarquin snapped, all 6 of his eyes blinking out of rhythm, a telltale display of agitation in his species. "That Ambassador Harper demonstrated exactly why our assessment of humanity is flawed," Vextor replied. "We accuse them of volatility. What we witnessed was not chaos, but precision, an intentional display calibrated for maximum diplomatic impact." Delegate Plint Took quivered in his containment field, his gelatinous body rippling with erratic stress patterns. "She threatened us." "She practically declared economic war, did she?" asked Krillvox, her antenna unfurling as analysis began to replace fear. "No, she outlined the consequences of our choices. Consequences we should have anticipated had we bothered to run the scenarios ourselves." The chamber fell into uneasy silence. Vextor accessed the security archives, pulling up Harper's confrontation. The holoscreen displayed her biometrics alongside the recording. "Observe," Vextor said, his tone clinical. "Heart rate, elevated but steady. Respiration, controlled. Stress markers increased, yet well within human norms. This was not loss of control. It was deliberate, tactical communication." Zarquin collapsed into his ceremonial seat, the iridescence of his skin fading to a bleak gray. "You suggest she planned this?" "Not necessarily planned," Vextor conceded, "but when the opportunity arose, she wielded it expertly. And most importantly, she achieved what we claimed humans could not. She expressed genuine emotion without surrendering control." From the shadows, Senior Delegate Grack finally spoke, his ancient reptilian voice like stone grinding in the dark. "We have erred gravely. Humans are not incapable of emotional regulation. They simply operate by parameters unlike our own. Different and dangerous." "Different," muttered Plint Took, "and destabilizing." "Different," Grack countered, "and extraordinarily effective. Consider what Harper accomplished in less than 30 minutes. She shattered our agenda, forced an emergency session, revealed years of carefully concealed maneuvering, and secured leverage for renegotiation. Krillvox's wings gave a thoughtful buzz, and she did it without a single act of violence. Without raising her voice beyond conversational levels." Zarquin lowered his head. "And now we have less than 18 hours to formulate a response." Vextor's comms chimed. He scanned the incoming dispatch and felt all 3 of his hearts falter. "That timeline," he said grimly, "may be shorter than we believed. Earth's central government has issued a statement. They are advising all human ships and personnel in Council space to prepare for potential recall." The chamber exploded into panicked chatter. Czar Quinn pounded his ceremonial staff 4 times before order grudgingly returned. They wouldn't truly abandon council space, Plint Took sputtered, droplets of his form flicking off under stress. The economic damage would harm them as well. Would it? Murmured Rozak, voice quiet but cutting. Humanity sustains remarkable self-sufficiency. 90% of their food, energy, and manufacturing remains independent. Meanwhile, we depend on them. 37 council worlds rely on human quantum communications. The Proxima colonies are defended almost entirely by human fleets. 6 major trade routes use their navigation systems. They made themselves indispensable while we obsessed over their manners, Krillvox realized aloud. No, Grak rumbled. We saw it. We simply focused on the wrong things. We obsessed over their expressions and overlooked their positioning. Czar Quinn's colors shifted faintly back from despair to calculation. Then what do we do now? Capitulate? The council already appears weak, Vextor said bluntly, adopting a human-like sharpness. Harper proved that for all to see. The question is whether we face that truth or keep pretending. Another alert pulsed across the main screen. Vextor read it and felt a chill through his cooling tubes. Humanity isn't waiting for our deadline. Merchant guilds across the Orion Arm have begun suspending transactions, citing system maintenance. Diplomatic staff on 12 worlds are withdrawing from their posts. Silence descended on the chamber, like a crushing weight. The humans had already begun their strategic withdrawal. Several human delegations have already requested temporary leave for consultation, Vextor reported, scanning the latest updates. And their military presence in the Proxima sector has initiated what they are calling routine exercises. In practice, those maneuvers form a defensive perimeter around their primary installations. They're preparing for withdrawal, without actually withdrawing, Grak observed, his gravel-like voice carrying something dangerously close to admiration. Another demonstration of control. Showing us the cost without executing the threat. Czar Quinn sank deeper into his chair, his skin darkening to a troubled hue. We have gravely misjudged these people. Yes, Vextor agreed, but not for the reasons we believed. The issue is not that humans are erratic or uncontrolled. The issue is that they are far more deliberate, far more strategic than we ever credited them for. Krillvox's antenna twitched in a pattern that signaled fresh insight. What if that was the point all along? What if their so-called polite mode was designed to make other species underestimate them? The chamber fell utterly silent at the suggestion. Impossible, Plint Took stammered, his gelatinous form shivering in denial. That would imply a species-wide deception spanning the entirety of their contact with galactic civilization. Not deception, Grak corrected coldly. Strategy. A subtle but critical distinction. Vextor found himself nodding. Consider their world. Earth is a planet of extremes, hostile environments, endless competition, thousands of rival cultures. Survival required adaptation. They became masters of behavioral flexibility long before they met us. What we call deception, they call survival. So what do we do now? Czar Quinn asked, his voice stripped of authority, his confidence abandoned. Vextor rose slowly. We do what the Council has never done before. We abandon our own polite mode. We admit error. We acknowledge their leverage. And we negotiate in good faith. The Council has never admitted fault, Plint Took protested weakly. Then perhaps it is time we learn from humanity, Vextor replied firmly. They have demonstrated that authentic control, controlled truth, can be more powerful than rigid protocol. For a long moment, Czar Quinn said nothing. His skin cycled through waves of color as he wrestled with the implications. At last, he lifted his gaze. Contact Ambassador Harper, he ordered. Request her immediate return. But not for a formal hearing. He hesitated, then added, invite her for what humans call a candid conversation. 3 hours later, Ambassador Harper returned to the chamber. This time the room was transformed. The rigid tiers of seats had been replaced with a circular arrangement, every delegate at equal height. Environmental settings had been adjusted to human comfort levels rather than the traditional compromise skewed toward older member species. Vextor noticed each detail with quiet approval. Zar Quinn had taken the suggestion seriously. "Ambassador Harper," Zar Quinn greeted, rising from his place. His ornate council robes were gone, replaced with simpler attire. Another symbolic gesture. "Thank you for returning on such short notice." Harper scanned the chamber, her eyes flicking across every adjustment with swift calculation. "Interesting redecorating, Council Leader. Almost feels like you're trying to make a human feel at home." "That is precisely the intention," Zar Quinn said carefully, "though I suspect you are far too observant to be persuaded by surface-level gestures." A faint smile touched Harper's lips. "Perhaps. Still, symbolism matters. And this symbolism is not lost on me." She took her seat, her posture loose but alert. Vextor studied her closely, uncertain whether this was the diplomatic mask or her true self. Perhaps disturbingly, it was both at once. "I assume this is not a formal council session," Harper said, noting the reduced number of attendees. "No," Zar Quinn confirmed. "This is what my advisors have termed a candid conversation. We believe humans value these." "We do," Harper acknowledged, her tone edged with curiosity. "Though I can't help but wonder, what has suddenly made the Council so interested in human preferences?" Zar Quinn's skin rippled with uneasy colors, shame and resolve. "Your demonstration earlier has prompted significant reconsideration of our position toward humanity." "My demonstration?" Harper's brows lifted. "You mean the moment I turned off polite mode?" "Yes," Zar Quinn admitted. "It was educational." A laugh slipped from Harper, unguarded and genuine. "That's one way to put it. So tell me, Council Leader, what exactly do you want now? Negotiate for softer terms, perhaps walk back the 50-year delay without losing face," Zar Quinn suggested, his voice carrying the brittle edge of someone clinging to procedure. "No," Vextor said firmly, cutting him off. The sharpness of his tone drew startled glances around the chamber. "That is not what we need." Harper's gaze shifted toward him, her head tilting in measured curiosity. "And what do you need, Ambassador Vextor?" "To understand," he replied, "everything we misjudged. This polite mode you described, the precision we mistook for volatility, the way your species has positioned itself while we focused on all the wrong metrics." Harper studied him in silence for several breaths, then let her eyes sweep across the circle of delegates. "You're serious?" "Completely," Zar Quinn confirmed. His tone had softened, humbled. "For millennia, the Council has operated under fixed assumptions about diplomacy and behavior. What you revealed today has challenged those assumptions in ways we cannot dismiss." "So this is no longer about our membership application?" Harper asked carefully. "On the contrary," rumbled Groke, his gravel-thick voice rising from the far side of the chamber. "It is entirely about your membership, but perhaps not in the way you expected." The ancient reptilian leaned forward, scales catching the chamber lights. "The Council has stood for 12,000 years. In that time, we have absorbed hundreds of species, navigated wars, and maintained fragile peace across 3 galactic arms. And yet," his unblinking eyes fixed on her, "in less than 3 short years of engagement with humanity, we now find ourselves questioning the very foundations of how we govern. It was unprecedented." Harper kept her expression neutral, though Vextor's scanner noted a subtle shift in her vitals, a spark of interest, perhaps even surprise. "We are a curious people," Harper said at last. "Humans question systems. We challenge structures instead of folding neatly into them." "Yes," Krill Vox agreed, antenna swaying with measured thought. "And that trait, what we dismissed as immaturity or rebellion, may in fact be your most valuable contribution." Harper's brows arched. "Are you saying—" "We are proposing," Zar Quinn interrupted, "not only to reverse our earlier rejection, but to establish a new role within the Council itself, a position designed for systemic evaluation and innovation." The chamber fell silent again. "You want humanity to be your official critics?" Harper asked, a trace of amusement in her tone. "The species designated to tell the Council when the Emperor has no clothes?" The idiom caused a ripple of confusion, but Vex Tor's translator filled in the context. He inclined his head. In essence, yes. We would call it a catalyst for institutional evolution. A slow smile spread across Harper's face. Not the careful mask of diplomacy, nor the dangerous grin from earlier, but something genuine, almost amused. Only the Galactic Council could respond to having its flaws exposed by creating an official title for the exposer. Do you realize how beautifully bureaucratic that is? Perhaps, Zar Quinn admitted, but perhaps that is precisely why we need your species. Our rigidity has served us well, but rigidity eventually cracks. Harper considered this. I'll need to consult with Earth's central government, and we would have conditions. As expected, Zar Quinn replied. And we are prepared to begin those negotiations immediately, starting with the rescinding of the membership delay. Harper pressed, testing. Consider it guaranteed? Guaranteed, Zar Quinn said. A formal announcement will be made at the next full session. Harper's eyes flicked to Vex Tor. You, Ambassador, you were the only one today who truly recognized what was happening. Vex Tor's scales flushed faintly with the unexpected acknowledgement. I have studied human behavior extensively. It is compelling. And now I wonder, Harper continued, does the Council itself have a version of polite mode? Habits you maintain for appearances? Rules that keep discourse smooth, but limit real communication? An uneasy silence followed. It was Groke who finally answered. Ambassador Harper, we have been operating in polite mode for 12 millennia. Perhaps it is time to consider switching it off. Harper laughed, a sound clear and unguarded. It seemed to shift the atmosphere of the chamber itself. Careful. Humanity learned the hard way that dropping politeness altogether can be explosive. Balance is key. Then perhaps, Zar Quinn suggested, your role should include teaching us that balance, when protocol must hold and when direct truth serves better. Cultural exchange as a two-way street. Harper leaned back, thoughtful. What a concept. For the first time in centuries, Vex Tor felt something unfamiliar bloom inside him. Optimism. This was more than a negotiation. It was transformation. I believe, he said slowly, that today may be remembered as the moment the Council itself began to evolve, beyond its own limitations. Harper regarded him with newfound